We have a question right here. Jeremy, we're going to go for maybe 5 more questions before we let people get their booze.
That's fine. I mean,
this is a question primarily for the Chinese side, but I'd also like to hear the Western side on this. To what extent can we trust Chinese statistics? And are there certain statistics that are more authoritative than others? Are government statistics as authoritative as, say, like a Chinese third-party, independent third-party statistics on, something from the number? Or can we trust the government statistics on the economy, but not trust them on something like Tibet? Obviously, there are a bunch of ways to game the numbers, but I mean, how much can we trust these, the numbers that we see?
I think you can never persuade yourself to believe a single source. Even in the traditional media, you have to have 2 independent sources to confirm something. So I think it's great we have internet and you can hear different voices to understand what's really happening. But we've never got a chance to believe a single source. Nobody's God and nobody's 100% honest, always say.
can I respond to that?
I don't think you can believe any numbers anybody tells you about China, whether they come from the Chinese government or from some commercial research organization. I mean, some of the data that you see out of, the area I'm familiar with in terms of media, that you see out of companies that have very good names, that I won't name from the West, who supposedly know what television programs Chinese people are watching or what websites they're going to. It's just bullshit. So, I mean, I think you need to have 10 sources if you can here. It's very difficult to collect information. And most people here lie, either because they're working for the propaganda department or because they're trying to make their company's bottom line look better. But I am a little cynical.
Have you done any survey? Go do a field trip and ask people questions and...
We're not allowed to.
If you have done a survey, you will know that no statistics are trustworthy. It depends on how you ask the questions, right? How you phrase the questions.
Market research is good.
Yeah, you can get whatever conclusion you want, basically.
My question is why the progress is so slow when it comes to the media freedom. The government seems. The question I want to ask is what's really on the mind of the government people? Personally, I know some of them, they are not fools. I don't believe they are fools, but as a whole, they do appear like so obtuse. So what's the problem? Is this a cultural thing because this is China, or it's about the system?
Well, Raymond, is that something you can answer?
Can I say that's an absolutely great question, but you've got some really rubbish people here to answer it.
Well, I will be asking the same question. Actually, I think that the situation in China is actually like a glass half filled. So it all depends on how you look at it. If you look at from an optimist point of view, it's full, right? It's half full at least. And on the other hand, it's half empty. And so when I go out and last year I went to Qinghai and I was basically confined to a room listening to governors, vice governors' reports and everything. And I excused myself and just went to the street. And I saw this street vendor selling a small thing, and he was reciting a rhyme. It's like a poem, it's like a limerick, so long, it took him 10 minutes, and it's all rhymed. And the content was commenting on everybody, every celebrity, from George W. Bush to Hu Jintao. And I started listening, and I got something very useful. When he came to the Hu Jintao Wen Jiabao part, can you guess what he said? Waiving the agricultural tax. So then I suddenly realized, for ordinary people like him, that's something really important. And when I talk to farmers, saving $200 a year means a lot. And then I feel, I'm asking for a little more room to write about the kind of things that I want to write. And then, if it's a trade-off, I think it's a good trade-off.
I think we have time for about 2 more questions, right, Robert?
Thank you. I want to put some perspective on the question this young lady just mentioned about the anger of the Chinese youth. Because I'm a Chinese young people educated in China and raised in China. I think the root cause of the hate or the cynicism against the Japanese is really it's really because of the way we're educated. When we're in school, like I remember 3/4 of the times of the history education was about infamy in contemporary China, how we're occupied by the British, by the 8 country allies, by the later Japanese. So this kind of patriotism or hatred has been fanned by this education. And so we become a high pride or say high esteem nation, which is not necessarily good. So that's some of my experiences. But talking about this Tibet issue, I noticed that Western media they're pretty critical in the terms that they use the word crackdown. While last year in Paris, the people are like, they're also burning shit, and Western media didn't use the word crackdown, and in the previous Los Angeles riot, you didn't use the word crackdown, but crackdown is used on the nations like China, Iraq, Pakistan. So, what's your response on that?
I guess you're asking the Western media representatives. Do you want to, John?
Yeah,
your former regents were vegetarians.
I get all the easy questions. It's tough to know which word to use. The other one is, are these protesters or are they rioters? Is this a demonstration or is this civil unrest? I've gone through the full gamut of vocabulary actually. I've used unrest, I've used crackdown, I've used stabilize the situation, I've used protester, I've used rioter. It seems to depend slightly on the context. If I'm talking about, for example, what happened in terms of the ethnic violence against some of the Han people living in Lhasa or the Hui people living in Lhasa, I think that it was a riot and crimes were committed, and this in this sense it's something that needs to be dealt with as a criminal case. But at the same time, if you look at the very big picture of 30 or 40 years of what's been happening in Tibet with regard to how frustrated many people there are at what they see as oppression by China, and sure, not everybody thinks that, but a hell of a lot of people there do think that. I've been there and spoken to a lot of people there. Then I think, even if it's not organized, the frustration is there, that they feel this is their way of showing that frustration. And in that sense, it is also a protest. So I struggle with the right words to use. It's not an easy decision to reach the whole time. And I try to fit it to the context of what I'm talking about at each time. But I have to confess, I don't have a perfect answer.